Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Canada Hoops. It's your boy, Matty. Thank you for your continued support. Please keep downloading and sharing us. Visit our YouTube channel. Hit us up on Instagram and X.com. Our big time guest today represents Oliver, British Columbia. He is a former South Okanagan Hornet, Victoria Vike. He is in the BC Basketball Hall of Fame and was inducted into the University of Victoria Sports Hall of Fame. And he is an alumni of the senior men's national team for Canada basketball. He is Spencer McKay. Spencer, appreciate you joining us on Canada Hoops, man.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Matty. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we chatted quickly before we hit record. Always really appreciate the alumni showing up and sharing their story and talking about their time in the game in this country and a lot of reflection, I'm sure. Just real quick, how are things? Let our listeners and the Canada basketball community know how you're doing and just kind of where life's at for you right now.
I'm living in Kaleiden, British Columbia, which is just south of Penticton.
Okay.
It's a great little kind of lakeside community. My wife and I moved back here in 2018 when I left UBC, and we love it here. We're both in the wine industry a little bit. Actually, she's just getting ready for work right now. She works in a tasting room just down the street from us. Got a lot of great friends here, and as soon as I moved back to Penticton, I'm from Oliver's about a 20-minute drive south of here, so I was obviously very familiar with the people here and with the lifestyle and everything, and got involved with Lake City Basketball, which is a local club here. We do competitive travel teams, we do camps, I've started an academy here in Penticton and down in Oliver. So doing all the fun stuff with coaching, with no pressure to win. So it's it's been great, and we really expanded our club since I got here. I started our youth leagues. My dad started Oliver Mini Ball, which is a same kind of thing. A youth basketball league when I was in grade 2, and that was a big reason, a huge reason that Oliver has been very successful in high school basketball in the last 30 or 40 years. So I decided to continue that legacy that he started in Oliver here in Penticton. It's been a big success. We've got 2 leagues that we run, and we've got one in the fall, one in the winter. I've restarted the league down in Oliver. So we had I think 100 kids playing, and just local kids in a town of 5,000 people, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
So just growing the game, and giving back to the community, giving back to the kids, and teaching them stuff that I was lucky enough to have learned over the years, having so many great coaches and having so many great experiences. It's just really fun staying part of the development of basketball in BC. And we're doing pretty well here. Our club's growing, and we've got some kids who are now seeing some success and going to the next level, playing university, playing college. My goal is to find the next kid who can play really the next level, and maybe get some national team tryouts or something. We haven't had that yet, but that's our goal. But in the meantime, it's just really fun to get kids involved and get them off their screens and I think we do a really good job of teaching the game. We've got a lot of really good coaches around here in Penticton, some very experienced coaches. As a matter of fact, one of our directors for Lake City Basketball, Chris Terrace, his dad, Ed, was my dad's sponsor teacher at North Delta when my dad was at UBC, along with Stan Stewartson, Stan Stewartson, SFU legend. So those 2 guys were my dad's sponsor teachers. So we were talking earlier about the basketball world being very small, and there you go. I moved to Penticton and saw Chris. I'm like, oh, your dad was my dad's sponsor teacher at North Delta. So, I'm loving life here. It's the Okanagan life is great, and just loving teaching the game to kids.
Yeah, just real quick, the Okanagan is a beautiful spot. So anybody that's listening and maybe people are obviously familiar with it, but if not, you gotta check it out. A beautiful part of Canada. Just with the coaching stuff, Spencer, was that something you figured would eventually always kind of happen for you? Like, was that a goal, and sort of a must do for you to do that and give back? Did you figure that would always kind of be there for you?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it was always a goal of mine, but I think it's just something that I just naturally fell into. Back when I was at UVic, Tom Johnson and I started doing some little clinics and camps in Victoria, and really loved that. And then I started working with a guy named Andy Wilmot, who played with me at UVic, and his younger brother, Ali Wilmot, is I think the 5th or 6th all-time leading scorer at UVic now. So they were both great players at UVic as well, and we were doing some camps and clinics in Victoria, and sort of in the summertime when I wasn't playing, and really loved that. And then, when I was playing over in Europe, my last couple of years, I started coaching the International School of Brussels in Belgium, and just kind of, that's the first time I'd ever coached a team. Actually, the first team I ever coached was a women's team, a second division professional team in Belgium. Okay. And I love that. I love the competition. I love the preparation. I love the, preparing for practices and everything. That's something I really enjoy doing. And then, I think in 2000, when my career was starting to, when my career was over playing, I started doing a basketball camp in Oliver called Nothing But Net. So it was Mo Basso, who I wouldn't call him a UVic legend, but he's a legend for other reasons. He played with me and Jeff McKay and Tom Johnson, Prince Rupert guy. So we started, and my dad actually hired him at the high school in Oliver. So we started doing this camp in 2000, and we just finished our 25th year this July. So the camp has been a major success. We had 95 kids this year. So we do 2 different age groups. We do an elementary camp and a high school camp. And, we probably get a lot more kids, but when we do our camp in the first or second week of July, whatever it is, that's peak cherry season. So a lot of our kids have farms, and they're in the orchard, picking cherries and working on the farm. So we probably would have had another 30 or 40 kids if we ran at a different time. But it's been great. It's been a great success, and just love being part of it and keeping that tradition going. COVID was kind of difficult to keep that going, but we thought about, okay, are we going to do this again next year? And then every year it comes around, we're like, yeah, we got to do it. It's become sort of a thing to do if you're a young athlete in the South Okanagan, is to go to our camp. So, and we do camps here in Penticton as well, but that's kind of my baby, and I think we do a really good job, and we've got lots of great local sponsors that help us out. So just make it really fun for the kids.
No, that's awesome, because really, in all parts of this country, people are giving back, from their playing time, and that's how the game progresses. And we're seeing the fruits of that at all levels, where now players have more and more opportunity and instruction and coaching, and we're getting better coaches. I think about, they just announced like the pool of coaches for the men's national team today, moving forward, to kind of assist Gordy as they get ready for 27 and 28, and our coaching pool is growing as well, and that's starting to be highlighted more and more. And obviously the player depth as well talked about, right? But we need alumni and players like yourselves in all areas of the country to give back, to grow it, and find that next player and help them and assist them. So hats off to you and your fellow coaches that are doing that. Super important. I think everyone recognizes that.
Well, thanks. And, speaking of Gordy Herbert, he's a Penticton guy. And my dad used to bring me up to Penn High to watch games when I was a little kid, and he was the guy we came to watch. Yeah. And so I've known Gordy for a very long time, and I think it's that's the best. He's the best hire Canada basketball has ever made, I think. Nice. And it's about time. I've been saying for 15 years now that Gordy should be our head coach. He's got an amazing basketball mind. He's a cool guy, great personality, and obviously, he won the World Championships with Germany. So he's a very successful coach. Yeah.
I think everyone's excited about that, Spencer. it seems very positive. Everyone you talk to is excited about it, and like you said, I think they, when they had to move away from Jordy Fernandez, that was the best move in a lot of opinions. So well said, and I'm excited. I think under him and his coaching staff that they've identified, and the players have the ability. I think the program is going to be in a good spot in the next few years for sure.
It certainly is. Yeah.
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 What you talked about mini ball at a young age, kind of with your dad, but why basketball? Like, just talk about really starting to love the game and wanting to develop your game. And I don't know if you played other sports, but just start taking me through, why you started being a basketball player, man.
Well, like a lot of guys from our generation, we played everything. I played volleyball right up until grade 12. I was on the provincial volleyball team, not more for fun and more for just extra training than I was never going to be a volleyball player, but I did it because we had some cool trips and
And the girls probably.
Well, it was our training camps for strictly guys. There was no girls around.
Okay.
I also swam. I was a competitive swimmer until grade 12, and we had a really good swim club in our town, and my dad was actually the president of the swim club. So we had our hands in all kinds of different sports. I played baseball a little bit too, but swimming was probably my second sport that I can't say I loved it. I was good. I was fast. I probably could have swam at the next level, but I'm a pretty social person. When you're a swimmer, you're in the water essentially by yourself for 4 hours a day, and
yeah,
you're training at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then you're training again at 4 o'clock in the afternoon for 2 hours. But the coach that my dad hired, he was a national team swimmer named Bill Nash, and I credit him for a lot of things that transitioned into my basketball game. And one of the things that I talk about with kids is you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and because you're going to be in situations where you're fatigued or something's sore, especially when you get older, everything hurts, or you're having a bad game or whatever, and you got to fight through that and learn to be uncomfortable, or learn to be comfortable in those uncomfortable situations. And I'm telling you, like swimming, with that guy, he was an extremely demanding coach. He would not let you slack off in the pool. He was deadly with a kickboard, so he would throw a kickboard at you from 20 meters and ricochet off your head.
Wow.
Can't do that these days, but I mean, it was funny back then.
Right.
But it taught me a lot of things. It taught me how to fight through fatigue, how to get prepared, mentally prepared for a race, and for training. I mean, you don't want to. Another big thing is dedication. There's not one time that I was looking forward to waking up at 5:30 in the morning to jump in a pool and train, especially in the summertime. It's not a natural thing for a teenager. So and my dad never let me skip practice ever, and I remember him coming down, trying to wake me up and come on, let's go. We got to go to practice. And if he had said, yeah, okay, you can sleep in today, I would have done it for sure. But He never let me, and my brother and sister were swimmers too. My sister was a very good swimmer. My brother as well. And, he just didn't let us ever miss practice. And so I think he instilled a lot of that part of, just, hey, you got to suck it up. There's lots of days you don't feel like going to practice, but you got to do it, in order to be successful and competitive. And so the swimming was a big part of my development. I think this cardiovascular as well, because I was always in very good condition as a basketball player, and the two sports are very different. You can be in fantastic condition in the pool, and then you go. I remember I'd go to the Gonzaga basketball camp, and I'd take a week off swimming to go to the GU camp, and it took me about 2 days to get my land legs back, and I'm like, geez, I'm in really good condition. I got no body fat, but I'm just gassed out on the court. But then when your body figures it out after 3 days, then I could go forever. So the conditioning part of it was huge for me with swimming. Volleyball for me, I always encourage my players to play another sport, at least one other sport. because you're learning different movements, you're hearing from a different coach. If you're the best basketball player on your team, probably you're not going to be the best volleyball player on your team. So it teaches you a little bit of humility as well. You're probably not going to be the best at every sport. I wasn't the fastest swimmer in the province. A couple of races I was, but there was always some guy out there who was faster than me, and so I think playing multiple sports teaches you a lot of things. And, you look at the sports science now points towards the kids who get injured the least are the kids who play multiple sports, because you're not just training the same muscles and the same movements all the time. So
right.
I'm a huge proponent of multiple sport kids. And when I was coaching at UBC, that's one of the first questions I would ask a recruit is, what other sports do you play or did you play? And if they just played basketball since they were 10 years old, then okay, I'm not saying I'm turned off, but we were more attracted towards players that play baseball or soccer or volleyball, swimming, things like that. Yeah.
No, I think that's obviously like well said, but yeah, it just goes without saying. Like it's there's so many crossover skills and intangible things that happen that benefit the athlete, and I'm always curious. When you ask that question, like what other sports help their game, and so when like you talked about going to watch Gordy, was you always see people in the community that you look up to, that you love their game and whatnot. Was he somebody that stands out? Was there anybody else that you looked up to basketball wise that you really appreciated their game?
Well, yeah. I mean, Dr. J was my hero, and back then the Supersonics were still around, so my dad would take us down to see Sonics games quite often.
Nice.
And I remember, I'll talk about some Canadian players I looked up to in a minute, but going down to see the Sonics was awesome. I had Sonics posters all over my room. Dr. J, Moses Malone, Iceman, all those guys, and I remember going to see the Sonics had a doubleheader. So the Sonics played the Boston Celtics, and then after that was the Sixers and the Lakers. So I got to see Dr. J play. I got to see Magic and Kareem, two of my other heroes. Got to see Larry Bird, and that was at the Kingdome, and my brother and I walked, and it wasn't a huge crowd. There's probably maybe 10,000 people there. The Kingdome's pretty cavernous, and we walked to the very top of the Kingdome. And for those listeners who don't know, the Kingdome was a football stadium. It's where the Seahawks played.
Right.
And we walked to the very top, and I remember Magic Johnson dribbling the ball down, and he would dribble it, and you couldn't hear the ball hit the floor until it came back up into his hand. That's how far away the court was. But yeah, seeing those guys play, obviously, just love those guys. Canada-wise, I mean, I remember, the national team at that time. I remember watching Eli Pasquale, Gerald Kazanowski. They weren't that much older than me. It was when I was really starting to really fall in love with the game and get to know who certain guys were. But in our valley, in the Okanagan Valley at that time, not many people understand how good the basketball was. The Okanagan Valley in the mid '80s was the hotbed of basketball in the country. I mean, our junior national team, when we played in the World Championships in 1987, there were 5 of us from Okanagan. So there was me, there was Jeff McKay, J.D. Jackson, Mike Clark, and Brian Kruger, and then we had Tom Johnson from the island. And those guys were all from different schools. So Jeff was from Penn High, from Penticton. JD was from Vernon. Mike Clark was Kelowna, and Brian Kruger was also in Vernon. So there were, and then Kelowna had Al Alond, who was on the bubble for making that team. He ended up being a point guard at UBC. So every school we had here in the Okanagan, you had a rival, and we were all really good friends, but when we played each other, it was a war. I mean, it was for bragging rights. We were a single A. Back then, it was only single A and double A. We were a single A school in Oliver. All the other schools were double A, so they had a much bigger population to pick from.
Yeah.
But Oliver was always a very good team, and the only team we lost to of all those teams was we lost to Vernon once. That was a controversial loss. I'm not going to talk about that one, but okay. we just could not beat Penn High with Jeff. Jeff was he was at that time when he was in grade 11 and 12, he was easily the best high school player in BC, like hands down. And he had been for a long time. And we have this rival game because Oliver had always been a strong basketball school. We had this rival game against Penn High called the Old Shoe. And the Old Shoe is this old Converse All-Star runner donated by a player back in the late 60s. And they bronzed it. And that's now become an annual game between Penn High and Southern Okanagan. And the 2 years that Jeff was in, well, Jeff played 3 years of high school. The 2 years I played against him when I was in grade 10 and grade 11, we couldn't beat them, and we had no answer for him. The last in grade 12, he scored 63 on us, and wow. We just couldn't do anything. He was just such a great player. And then we finally won when I was in grade 12, but. Yeah, so with Jeff, we're best friends to this day. He lives in New York. He's a investment banker, but has a house here in Penticton. So we're on the phone a couple times a week and chatting every day. And that was, we were good friends in high school. And back then there were no clubs or anything. So you had to develop your game basically on your own or with your own friends in your backyard or the school or whatever. And so Jeff was a big part of my development because I knew he practiced a lot because he was a phenomenal player. And it was one of those, things I always tell kids, it's important to have a rival, even if you're friends, because I would be shooting in my backyard and my mom was calling me to come in for dinner. And I'm like, I know Jeff's still shooting. I know he's still practicing. I got to stay out here and hit 100 more shots or whatever. So, and we would, JD, same thing. And we would, when we were on a team together, national team or whatever, we would talk about those things. And they would say the same thing. Like, I know Spence is still shooting. I got to stay out here and get my shots up because he can't practice more than me. So that's just one of those things that I think good players always have a rival, whether you like them or not, and they use that as motivation to work harder and to practice more and to get more reps in and everything. I think it's super important to have that. So I was lucky enough to have a lot of great players from our valley growing up, and I wasn't driving up to Penticton and playing one-on-one against Jeff, or going up to Kelowna and playing one-on-one against Mike Clark and Alumni and getting into runs and stuff. There were no clubs back then, so all the development had to happen on your own. And I think with the club stuff, there's so many more opportunities for kids these days, and maybe a little too much. I don't know. I still think that the majority of your development happens on your own, in the gym by yourself. I mean, I was lucky enough. My dad was the VP at my high school, so I could get up in the gym anytime I wanted. So my buddies and I were always in there playing one-on-one, playing 3-on-3, playing 5-on-5, and that's where you develop. There's all these personal trainers now, and they're doing all this crazy stuff, and I'm like, the best way to improve is just to play 5-on-5, play one-on-one. Yeah. Simple basketball. I mean, you still need to get your reps in, and still need to work on your individual skills, obviously, but some of the best learning experiences I ever had by far as a player were playing, 5-on-5 we called it rat ball, just pick up basketball at UVic, with guys like Eli and Kaz and Wilcher and Phil Ole and all those guys. Those are some of the most competitive, just knockdown, drag out basketball games I've ever been a part of by far. Yeah.
No, that's cool. I mean, it takes rivals and competition to work on your own game and develop it. And if I'm reading the note right here, you did lead your team from Oliver to the 86 provincial championships. You got MVP honors in every tournament that your team played. First athlete in the school's history to have his number retired. So obviously good success, Spence, which, takes you to Vic. Like, how does that happen? A kid from Oliver going to Victoria to, one of the top programs in the country at the time, and for a long time, play for legendary coach Ken Shields. I just want to know how Victoria starts to come to fruition, why you went there, if you were considering other schools, and just that moment in your journey, man.
Well, yeah, it was a tough decision because at that time I was being recruited by, the two schools that I took my official visits to in the U.S. were Loyola Marymount. So Paul Westhead was the head coach there. And it was actually the assistant coach named Jay Hillock, who was the assistant at Gonzaga when I went down there for the camps, and he remembered me. The two schools I visited officially back then, I'm not sure if the rules changed, but you were only allowed 2 official visits. So I went to Loyola Marymount and San Jose State. Those are the 2 schools that were really after me hard. I had schools like Washington State and Gonzaga got in late. If they were in early, I would have gone to Gonzaga, I think, because I was always a Bulldogs fan.
Yeah.
Growing up, I went to their camp and everything. But so I went down to Loyola Marymount, and that's when they were recruiting Hank Gathers and Bo Kimball and I remember sitting in Paul Westhead's office. They picked me up in a limousine at the airport, and I'm thinking, man, I'm from Oliver. Like, what's going on here? Why do these guys want me? And they were actually, all those guys were in, not Paul Westhead, but the 2 of their assistant coaches were in the crowd in Oliver when we played in the provincial championships. The San Jose State guys were there. The Gonzaga guys were there. And this is before internet. So it was pretty cool. Like I felt really pretty good about that. But then I remember going into Coach Westhead's office, and he's got 2 NBA rings, and he's got a picture of, him with Magic and him with Kareem and talking about their program and everything. And I'm like, I'm in Los Angeles getting recruited by an NBA coach, and I knew who he was. To be honest, I was a little intimidated because, I'm from a town of 5,000 people, a bunch of farmers, and it was a little scary. I always think, like, what would have happened had I chose to go there, and I would have been a part of that famous team that made that run into the Sweet 16. And they wanted me because I was fast, and I was a mobile big who could shoot. But I didn't really, Westhead's vision of basketball was probably about 15 or 20 years ahead of time. He was a visionary, and I to be honest, I didn't really get it that time. And so I was very close to going there. It was like, I remember sitting in my room at night going, okay, do I go to Los Angeles or do I go to Victoria? I don't know. Every Canadian coach at that time was telling me, oh yeah, well, every Canadian who goes down and plays in the NCAA comes back and they're disappointed or they don't play. And looking back, I'm like, I definitely could have played. I think I would have had a good career wherever I went. Now, UVic came into the conversation pretty early because the biggest basketball camp in BC was in Penticton. And my dad actually started it in Oliver when I was in grade 3 or something. And Fred Fedoruk, who was the head coach at Penn High, contacted my dad and he said, you want to move the camp to Penticton? We can get more kids, and it's getting pretty popular. So my dad and Fred decided to move that camp to Penticton. And then Shields came in and ran the camp for a few years. Marv Harshman from University of Washington, came up a couple of years. And then Kevin Hansen at UBC ran it for a few years. Jay Triano at Simon Fraser came in and ran it for a few years. So it was a huge camp. And so I got to know Ken there. I was probably grade 6 or 7, I guess, the first time I started going to the Penticton camp. So Ken, he's to be honest, I love Ken. He's a great mentor. Was not the best recruiter in the world. So he would call me and it would be silence on the other line. Hey Ken, how you doing? And good. Other coaches they got the gift of the gab and they're sending your mom flowers and you're getting cards in the mail every week. And
yeah.
I obviously knew about UVic's success. I knew that Ken was a great coach. All of his players learned how to play basketball. It wasn't just go there and you're just a cog in the wheel. Like you learn how to play ball there, and they had a great tradition, great culture. So I went up there for a couple of visits, and it was actually Howard Kelsey, I don't know if he's ever been on your program, but Howard, longtime national team player, was the assistant athletic director at UVic at that time. So he was the guy who really recruited me hard. I liked Howard. I knew him, great personality, really took me under his wing and with the national team and everything. So Howard did the majority of the recruiting there. And then the success of the program kind of sold itself. And I said, well, I got 5 years here. I want to play pro basketball somewhere. If I go to Loyola or San Jose State or yeah, you can come back, but it kind of wasn't a thing back then. Like guys weren't really going down to the States and then turning around, coming back home. They kind of stay there and kind of grind out their career. So I didn't really want that to happen. I wanted to get a chance to play pro. And I knew that guys like Greg Wilcher and Kaz and Eli and some guys were having pretty good careers overseas. And that's sort of where it was. And there weren't a lot of Canadians playing in the NBA back then. So obviously my goal was to play in the NBA, but, it was a different world back then. And the NBA wasn't very international. There's really just American guys and a couple of European guys, and that's about it. A couple of Canadian guys, but those Canadian guys grew up in the States.
Yeah,
like Bill Wellington and those guys. So, UVic, I went out and did my visit there. Jeff McKay went there, and obviously we were good friends by that time. And he had great things to say about the program and the culture there. So, so I made a difficult decision. I don't regret it for a second. I love the school. I love being there. Unfortunately, we never won a championship, but we came close. We had some great teams and came up against some great teams. I mean, Brandon, when you think about it, when we lost to them in the national final, they had, 4 guys from Tulane University. They were a top 20 school at that time that transferred somehow, got into Brandon and became eligible. And then they had Patrick Jebison, who was the player of the year. They had Joey Vickery, who was an incredible player, and a bunch of other guys too. So, and then, some of my best friends are guys I ended up going to school with, guys from Whitehorse and guys I played with. So, the UVic thing was great. And they weren't very happy when I got hired at UBC to coach there. I was given the cold shoulder by a few guys for a few years, but
I wondered about that because that was you make that move and rival schools, so it's interesting you brought that up. But are you still the all-time leading scorer for the Vikes? That's a note that's here. I'm not sure if someone's passed you or not.
Yeah, Diego Mafia passed me, and I don't know what everyone's saying. Well, he had an extra year to do it because they had the COVID year and everything. So I don't know, whatever. And so it is what it is. It was, I think I held the record for 34 years, which isn't bad. I certainly took fewer shots than him. Yeah. But I think Diego's passed me, and that's great. They flew me out there to present the game ball to him and everything, and then
cool.
Yeah, it was, and he's a great kid, very good player, and well deserved.
Yeah, obviously Ken, he had time on the national team with you at the same time. Just, he said he's a quiet man with the recruiting side, but just talk about his impact, Spence, and just from a coaching spot, maybe off the floor too, as you're a young man. Just curious to know more about Ken.
Well, unbelievable basketball mind, and you look back at our tapes and everything, and we played the old high post offense. So I think the game was different back then. It looked a little bit slower, but our practices were super intense. Everything we did was competitive. So even like before we took a drink break, you'd have to shoot 10 free throws against a partner, and then the loser ran a set of lines. So everything we did was competitive. We were super fit. During our training camp, we would go, 2.5 hour practices, and then we put our shoes on and go for a 5K timed run. And you couldn't slack off. Like, we had assistant coaches and managers at certain points during the run to make sure guys weren't cutting corners or make sure guys weren't slacking off. And so we were, I go back to my swim coach. Like, Ken was the same kind of thing. Like, our practices were harder than our games, and that was by design. And but aside from the fitness and the everything, like, he was a really good skills coach. He was very fundamental. Taught me that the little things in the game are actually really big things, like where you put your foot on this angle, or how you're sealing a guy, or defensively as well. Like, just when in high school, you don't really need to play defense, and you don't really need to be able to guard guys, because you can sort of let your athletic ability and your size and length kind of compensate. But when you get to that next level, you have to be fundamental defensively, and just a great teacher of the game. And I would say off the court, like, he is a scholar. Like, he was the athletic director. He was very heavily into academics, and I've heard a couple people over the years kind of say, well, yeah, Ken was all about the basketball team. That's totally false. His when he was the AD at UVic, his goal was to get Olympians in every sport. So we had Olympians in swimming, we had Olympians in basketball, we had Olympians in track, cross country, field hockey. We had rowing, of course. We had rugby. We had a bunch of like really successful, top shelf athletes at that school, and his goal was to not just produce Olympians in basketball, but in every sport that UVic had. And so he hired great coaches. He hired coaches who wanted to really build programs. So yeah, off the court, he was very heavily into academics as well. So we would meet with him every week and talk about our classes and how they're going. And luckily, a lot of our profs were basketball fans, so
yeah,
that helped us. We had to hand in an assignment late or whatever. They're pretty forgiving that way. But I mean, when I was getting recruited by UVic and talking to some of the players, like, they said, he's going to teach you the game. Like, you'll learn how to play basketball. Like, forget about what you know now. Yeah, you're a really good high school player. Okay, you play in the junior national team, but Shields will teach you how to play basketball. And I would probably a big reason that I went to UVic is because I played 1 year on the junior national team as a grade 12 or grade 11 before I made my decision. So I already had him as a coach in real practice and real games, and he was not an easy guy to play for, but that's what I was looking for. I was looking to be pushed.
No, I mean, I think going back, look at the coaching tree in this country, and maybe the national team specifically, and Jack Donahue was kind of at the forefront, and just filters down, and Ken, and you mentioned Jay, and there's been some others, but others I've talked to recognize Ken's place in the game, and I had Steve Konchalski on, obviously big time legend, and he revered. He talked highly of Ken as well, and so I'm glad you had that time with him, and the impact he had, and um, the program at the time was very premier in the country. He said, "Yeah, you didn't win, but always competitive." And you mentioned
And
going. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to say one of the things I didn't mention is the accountability part of sports, and like there were no stars on our. We had stars on our team, but we were all treated equally. Like it was the first time in my life when I started playing at UVic that I was subbed out for making a mistake. Like you missed a rotation on defense, and didn't matter who you were. Like you're coming out,
Right.
maybe for a minute. You're going back in the game, but he held every. I said held everyone to the same standard. It didn't matter who you were. If you made a mistake, you were going to hear about it, and you were coming out of the game. And he was like that with the national team. He was like that with at UVic, and that's something I sort of I've taken into my own coaching. Maybe not quite as strict as he was, but I hold all my players accountable, and if they're not doing the right things, they're going to hear about it and they're going to come out of the game.
No, that's cool. I mean, that's leadership, and recognizing that the team comes first. You you
Yep.
um you had the pro goal, and you went down in Victoria. Like, take me through that. What that looked like at that time. A player trying to go pro, and um, pre like maybe internet, obviously, and just how did the pro journey start for you, Spencer?
Well, I guess like around Christmas time of my 5th year at UVic, I went to Guy Vitry, who was our coach at that time, and I said, "Look, I'm not looking forward. I'm focused on this season and our goals for this season, but I want to sort of get the ball rolling, and can you help me out with agents?" And I wasn't really sure how the whole thing worked. I talked to Eli Pasquale, Gerald Kazanowski. They all had agents. They had the same agent, actually. So it was those guys who put me in touch with the agency that ended up signing me. And yeah, it was no internet back then, so it was very difficult. I had to spend a lot of time with VHS tapes, and I wasn't very good at video editing. There was nobody around who could do that for me, so I chose two games that I played well, made a bunch of copies and sent them out to these agents, and then they would do the same thing, and they would send them up to teams. So it was not easy. And it wasn't easy being a Canadian guy, because most of the my whole career over in Europe, I was considered an American. So most of the teams over there, you're allowed 2 foreign players, and they were always American. So you were just called American. And that's how that's the terminology they would use. Well, we need another American. Now, whether they come from US or Canada or Brazil, they're still an American. So my first job I got was in Portugal, and I was in, I think we were in Boston, or we were doing a Big East tour with the national team. So we played Georgetown. I could play against Alonzo Mourning and Allen Iverson. We played at Syracuse in their home opener at the Carrier Dome. Was like 20,000 people there. Played UConn, played against Ray Allen. And so we were in the middle of this tour, and I think we were playing Boston College or Boston University. And I got a call from my agent. This is like in early October, I think. And he said, "I got a job for you in Portugal." And I go, "I didn't even know they played basketball in Portugal. I got lots of Portuguese friends. They all play soccer."
Yeah.
So Joey Vickery was my roommate at that time, and I sort of put my hand over the phone. I go, "My agent's got a job for me in Portugal. Should I go?" He's like, "Yeah, go, take it, whatever. Like, get over there." So I did, and so I flew home, I think, the next day, got my stuff together and was on the plane to Lisbon a couple of days later. And then I played a game the same night I arrived, believe it or not.
Wow.
So I hadn't slept, and I can't sleep on the plane.
Yeah.
My contract said I'm supposed to have a business class seat. It wasn't. It was an economy class seat. So I'm just cramped in this plane. It was a really long flight. And the team picked me up at the airport literally on the way to a game. So we went and played Benfica. Now, Benfica is by far the biggest club in Portugal. Soccer, obviously, they're world famous for soccer. They've got a 110,000 seat stadium. And their basketball arena is built like onto their soccer arena. So, and you can barely see it. And their basketball arena, I think, sat 6,000, something like that. And
Wow.
so we go play Benfica. They're the best team in the country, in the league. And my team was in, I think, last place or second last place. And I hadn't slept. And I went in a drop. I had 36 points, had like 5 dunks.
Nice.
And we lose the game, but I played really well. And I remember being after the game, just being, pissed off my teammates because they're all like before the game, like, oh, we're gonna get killed, and that wasn't my attitude. I'd never been around a team like that. I was like, come on, guys, like we can hang with these guys. I'd never seen them play before, but like, why have that attitude? Right. After we lost the game, I was like, okay, well, these guys were way better than us. It was a good experience, and ended up playing they had an all-star game there, which was kind of fun. Was a difficult place to play because obviously, like, soccer is by far the number one sport. We had to share our gym with like roller hockey is a big thing there. Like, they're on roller skates and they play hockey.
Really?
And it's a big thing, and they play. So our roller hockey team practiced on our gym floor. So our gym floor was thrashed. Like, if you dove on a loose ball, you're coming up with splinters. It was just awful. So it's some very interesting experiences there. The guy that I replaced. Okay. So this American guy that I replaced, I was supposed to get a nice car too. They gave me this old. I'm a car guy, so it was a Ford Cortina, and it was like a 1977 or something. And I remember getting the car, and the entire floor, driver's side, passenger side, back seat, was covered in peanut shells. So this guy. A lot of the American guys that come over there, and they're kind of afraid of local food. And every country I played in, I love the food. I mean, they've all got their own specific cuisine, and I'm a food guy, so I was all over that. But all he ate was peanuts and M&Ms. He wouldn't. We also had a restaurant in our gym, and we could eat there for free. And these guys never took advantage of that for some reason. Oh, you guys are crazy. This food is great.
Right.
So that was my first year playing overseas, and then my second year was in Hungary. So a step up in terms of the league. Was a really good league, and it was right after, like 2 years after the Berlin Wall fell. So it was, Hungary was a communist country or a socialist country, but controlled by the Soviet Union. And so being there was really, really eye-opening. I learned a lot. I actually got J.D. Jackson his first contract. So we were looking for another player, and I go, well, I got this guy who's really good, like really good. So J.D. came over there about a month after I was there.
Okay.
And so it was interesting experience. Like things took a long time to get back to sort of a westernized country. So you go to the supermarket, and there might be chicken there that day, or there might be, some beef, or, we're trying to shop and cook for ourselves, and we didn't recognize anything. Like, you're going through your shopping, I was going, I don't even know what this is. Is this ketchup? I don't know. Right. There's like no labels that we had, because none of the Western labels were allowed there, even 2 years after communism. You know, and they were super strict with certain things. Like JD and I went to see a movie one time, and we were the only people in the theater. Like, we were the only two people in the theater. It was Interview with the Vampire. Remember that? So we went to see this movie, and we had our tickets, and they had seat numbers on them. So we're like, well, we'll just sit wherever we want. So we sit right in the middle, 2 seats apart, you know, as guys do. And the usher comes over, and he is yelling at us in Hungarian, and he made us go to our assigned seats, even though we're the only 2 people there. So, but it was cool that we were the only show in town. You know, the town it was called Zalaegerszeg. Doug Plum ended up playing there, so I got him a contract there a few years ago. So you can talk to him about his experience there. Vastly different from when I played there, because we had a soccer team in town, but they weren't that popular. So the whole town came out and watched our games. So we got like 5,000 to 6,000 people a game, and we were kind of big stars there. And everywhere you went, everyone knew who you were, and they wanted to buy your drinks and everything. So that was it was one of my. I've been back to Hungary several times because I love the people there. They were super generous, and you know, by comparison, they were making nothing compared to our salaries here in North America. But they were like the most generous people I'd ever met, and the food was amazing. You know, Budapest is one of the greatest cities in Europe, obviously. So we had a great time there. We had fun. My teammates were awesome. You know, taught a lot of them English because none of them really spoke any English before we got there. Didn't learn very much Hungarian. It's a very difficult language, but I learned all the key words, you know, as you do. So yeah, that was my first 2 years playing, and then went to Belgium after that and played with Tom Johnson.
Did you have a favorite stop on the pro career? You've obviously mentioned how much you liked Hungary, but any place, whether it was league or country, just really stand out as kind of the best spot for you?
You know, I get that question a lot, and I have to say I loved every place I played for certain reasons, you know, and sometimes for the same reasons. When I played in the country, they always give you a car, and one of the first things I would do is just go drive and go get lost somewhere and go meet people in small towns and find some little cafe. And you don't speak any other language. A lot of times they don't speak any English at all, but you can figure things out with hand gestures. And I just loved, you know, immersing myself in the culture of whatever place I was with. You know, I loved France, loved Belgium. 2 very different countries, even though they're side by side.
Yeah.
And I just loved just traveling and going to new places. I'm really into history, so I would find, you know, historical sites and go to, you know, military cemeteries or places where certain battles took place. You know, being in Budapest, there's still holes in the wall, machine gun holes from their the Hungarian Revolution.
Wow.
And you know, a lot of places in Europe are like that. So I would those are the things I love to do, aside from play. Yeah, I don't think I have I mean, I keep going back to France. I love France. It's, you know, there's the food is amazing. I'm sure I drank some amazing wine there. I knew nothing about wine at that time.
Right.
I look back and I'm like, man, I must have drank some really good wine with, you know, at dinners with our some of our players and coaches and sponsors and stuff. But I didn't know anything about wine at that time. But you know, every country was great for its own reasons. I can't say I had a bad experience in any country. The only place I would say I called my agent and told him to get me out was in when I played in Spain. I played in a place called Melilla. Now, Melilla is actually on the continent of Africa. It's a little Spanish enclave, and so you can't leave, you can't go anywhere. You know, so on the Moroccan side was a huge fence, actually a big, like a 40-foot wall. And the wall would only open to let the Moroccan workers come in once a day to work in Melilla, and then they would leave at nighttime. So
Yeah.
I felt trapped. If it was, I call it Alcatraz, because I couldn't go anywhere. You had the sea on one side, and the beaches were awful. They were like littered with garbage and stuff. Then you had this massive wall on the other side. So I was actually there with Joey Vickery I was there for maybe 3 weeks. Played a couple games. I called my agent. I'm like, you got to get me out of here. This is awful. I can't be cooped up like this. And the only time we left the island was to go play our league games.
That's
so
great.
he got me out of there, and I went to Austria. We played there.
Man, listen, like, we haven't touched too much on the Canada basketball stuff, and love to get into that with you. You played for the program, represented it very well. What did playing for Canada mean for you, Spencer, throughout your career and being able to represent the country?
Yeah, it was an honor. I mean, I always wanted to represent Canada. Whether it was in basketball or like swimming, I guess it was. My dad was a huge sports person overall, and I remember sitting down watching the '76 Olympics, and we watched everything. We watched track and field, watched Greg Joy, the high jumper from Canada, win the bronze medal. Like, I just loved that. I started getting into high jump when I was a kid because I loved him. All this, the swimmers like Alex Bauman was one of the greatest swimmers of all time in Canada, and just watching those guys, and they had the maple leaf tattoo on their chest, and I was my goal to represent Canada in the Olympics at some level, in some sport. I don't care what it was, and I was 9 or 10 or whatever. So it was always a goal of mine to represent Canada. The first time I got to put that uniform on with the junior national team was in 1985. I was in grade 11. It felt so good. I mean, it felt so good just to put the practice jersey on. You look down and it says Canada with a maple leaf on it. And
yeah,
that was such a great feeling. And then, getting to represent Canada at, in tournaments, and then later on at World Championships, and played in 2 FISU games, was a huge honor, and my parents were very proud that I got to represent Canada. All my friends were as well, and it was, representing them as much as representing my country. And it just felt really good. And, you also have to understand that when you're on the court, when you're off the court, you're still representing your country. And if you mess up and do something stupid or say the wrong thing to somebody, the first thing they look at is your country,
Right.
And I tell that to kids all the time, and you're representing your sport, you're representing your school, your family. And when you get to that, if you get to that level, you're representing your country, which is a big deal. So we're poor, you're a poor university student. You've got no clothes. So everything you wear says Canada on it, because it's the stuff that they give you. Right. So you gotta be wary and make sure that you're being a good representative of your country. But yeah, it felt, every time I put that uniform on, it felt great.
What I've got obviously a few questions about the program. When your time with it, you play with guys like Rick Fox and obviously Steve on the 94, Steve Nash on the 94 World Teams, but also legends like Leo Routens and Eli Pasquale. We had Dwight Walton and David Turcotte join us. Just such a wide range, Spence. Like, when you think about some of those teams and rosters and guys you played with, like, is there teams or moments and guys that stand out, just across the board, because you played with a wide range of guys?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious guys you mentioned, Steve and Rick. I mean, and I had known Steve since he was in grade 8 or 9, because he grew up in Victoria, and
right.
He told me when he was in grade 9, I think, that I remember walking down the hallway with him at McKinnon Gym and at UVic, and he and his buddies will always come out and watch us practice and come and shoot around with us. And I said, so what's because at that time he was honestly, he was more known as a soccer player than a basketball player.
Right.
But I knew that he was a great basketball player as well. And I said, "What's your goal in basketball? What do you want to do?" And he goes, "I want to be MVP." And I go, "Of what?" And he said, "The NBA." And I go, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
It's a pretty bold statement for a 14-year-old, but and he did it. I mean, so playing with Steve obviously was a highlight of my career. But I look back and probably the team that I was probably the most successful and I would say underrated team was our 92 FISU Games team when we played in Sheffield. We won the silver medal, lost to the U.S. in the final. And that was a team that we weren't supposed to do anything. Like, we weren't supposed to be very good because we were playing against, Yugoslavia had their unified team.
Right.
The Soviet Union had their team. The U.S., they had Gary Payton, and they had Bobby Hurley and a bunch of like stars, and Lionel Simmons. I mean, they were great. So we go there and sort of a ragtag group of guys. They threw us together the last minute. We had like maybe 2 weeks to practice. So there was me, there was Richard Stewart, Joey Vickery, Ron Putzi, Martin Keene, Phil Dixon, Barry Beckadam, Scott Patterson. I mean, we just a bunch of guys they threw together, good players, obviously. Alex Jarosevich was on that team as well, Tom Johnson. And so we weren't expected to even come close to winning a medal. And we ended up just becoming kind of like the team of the tournament, and ended up just overperforming. But I wouldn't say overperforming. I figured we played to our potential. We were as good as we could have played. I'm not sure if I mentioned Martin Keene, another great Canadian basketball player on that team. So, after our first couple of games, we started really figuring things out. Jerry Hemmings was a head coach. We loved playing for Jerry because he kind of let us play. It was really very different from Shields, but we were always ready to play. He made sure that we were prepared and got us ready to play the next game. So these are multi-sport games. So we've got a bunch of other teams and other different sports staying in the same dorms and everything as we were, and we started getting people from other sports coming out and cheering us on because we were overachieving, in everyone's eyes. Not really in ours, but in everyone's eyes, we became a popular team to come and watch. And so we beat the Soviet Union, and they were called the Soviet Union then, still, in the semifinal. And I think we're the last international basketball team to defeat the Soviet Union in basketball. So that was a big deal for us. And then we ended up losing to the U.S. in the final. I almost got in a fight with Rodney Rogers, which was probably not the smartest thing I could have done. But I thought he was talking a little too much trash. And but whatever. It was a great tournament. We got that. I've got that silver medal still in my display case downstairs. It was a very proud moment for all of us. And a couple of guys were really upset that we lost. I'm like, hey guys, we won a silver medal. We lost to a bunch of NBA players, in the final. But that was a highlight. Some of the team when we centralized in 1993, we all sort of made a decision to not play overseas that year, so we could all play together. And we centralized in Victoria. So there was, me, JD, Dwight Walton, Martin Keene, Vickery, Tom Johnson, Wayne Yearwood. Like we all sort of decided not to play. We weren't, we didn't give up huge contracts or anything. We weren't making huge money by today's standards, and to train and centralize in Victoria.
Was that to get ready for the Worlds the next year? Like,
Yeah,
was that the idea? Okay.
yeah,
All
that
right.
was to get the core of our team together. Rick wasn't there, obviously. Steve wasn't there because
Yeah.
they were playing. Steve was at Santa Clara. Rick was playing with the Celtics.
Yeah.
And Greg Wiltshire was overseas playing. Kaz was overseas, but he didn't play on the national team that year. And Eli was done. So the core of our team was in Victoria, and we had a great deal. We were staying right in the water at the Harbor Towers Hotel, so we each had our own suite. So the national team treated us very well that way. And then, so what we did was we would go down, we would play in these money tournaments down the States. So I mentioned we played, we did a Big East tour. We played against a bunch of D1 schools for their home openers and stuff. Then we go out and play in these money tournaments in like Montana and Idaho and places like that. And some of my best memories were, I mentioned Joey Vickery a couple of times. And I think, if you, the guys from that era who actually played with him and saw him play, like in my mind, he's the most underrated player in the history of Canadian basketball. He's 5'9", maybe he's listed at 5'10", but he's 5'9".
Right.
And he was Steph Curry before Steph Curry. Like, he was the first guy I ever saw who would come down on a fast break, breakaway and pull up and shoot a three. Nobody in the world was doing that. And I remember playing these tournaments. We were playing against some Marathon Oil or a bunch of guys who played either played in the NBA or were high D1 guys, and we'd be warming up. And here's Joey Vickery, this little white guy with a mustache, and they're all pointing and laughing at him during warmups. And like, who's this guy? Like, is this guy a manager? Like, why is this guy playing on this basketball team? And then Joey would go out and drop 38.
Wow.
And hit like 5 or 6 threes. And, I remember in the handshake lines, this happened several times. You can ask Dwight about it. You can ask Wayne. You can ask any of these guys because they were there. They saw this. These guys would be in the handshake line going, yo, man, my bad. I had you all wrong. Like, never underestimate your opponent because that guy's on that team. He's there for a reason, right? So those are some of my best memories. Were just hanging out with those guys. We Joey and JD and Ron McMahon and Corey Hallis is another guy I didn't mention, another great player. We were in Montana for one of these tournaments, and Shields was gone. I think he had to go back to Victoria for some reason, and so Hemmings was took over as the coach, and we had a couple days off. And our days off were shooting in the morning, weights, and then a practice or something in the evening. And JD and I were in this pub one night, and we were asking the bartender, "Hey, is there a ski hill around here?" Because JD and I both grew up skiing as well, and so did Ron, and so did Corey. And they said, the guy goes, "Yeah, there's a place called Big Mountain. It's about an hour drive from here. It's a really nice ski hill." And so I had the keys to our van, and I looked at JD and I'm like, "You want to do it? Should we go skiing tomorrow and just blow off practice? I mean, Shields isn't here. He's not gonna. He can't run us, and Hemmings isn't gonna run us." So we called Ronnie, and we called Corey, and we decided that we were gonna go skiing the next day. So we took the team van. We met down in the lobby at like 5 a.m. So we started driving to Big Mountain, and we stopped along the way, and we bought some toques and gloves, and we were wearing jeans. We weren't even wearing winter clothes. But all four of us were. I hadn't skied in probably 7 or 8 years. Same with the other guys, but we in pretty good shape. We figured we could handle it. And then we get to the mountain, and we rent some boots and skis and poles and everything. And I had size 16 shoes. I got size 17 now, but size 16 back then. And I actually found boots that I could rent that fit. And so we were the only guys in the mountain. It seemed there was no lines at the lifts. It was a beautiful day, no clouds in the sky. And I remember the first so we get up, and we're still kind of a little getting our ski legs down, and JD and I were racing down this ski run and looking at each other going in a full tuck, and we're like, we get down to the bottom of the hill, we're like, what are we doing? Like our basketball careers are at stake, or we break a leg or something like that, we're in trouble and we're not playing for a year. Anyway, that was one of the best days of our lives. We blew off practice, which Shields, I don't even know if he knows we did that to this day. And
he probably knows.
I'm sure
he'll
know now. And we came back and we had goggle tan marks around our face, and Hemmings like, whoa, where were you guys? What happened to you guys? We missed your practice. And we're like, oh, we went tobogganing with Ron's cousins or something. I can't remember the excuse we made, but we had a great time and no one got hurt. So
that's a great story. Like Spencer, when you see the program now, in terms of Canada basketball and just where it's at, obviously funding's gotten so much better. But with respect to like the player pool and the talent, like they're kicking off Global Jam tomorrow. The AmeriCup's coming up for the senior men's. Like, as an alumni and just seeing what it's taken to kind of really put things forward, and the game has developed in the country, but for the national team side of things, like, what are your thoughts on it, man? Just where it's at. We had a coaching change. We talked about Gordy, but the program seems to be recognizing another step had to be taken. But I'd just love to hear some of your thoughts on the program, man.
Well, I think, to be honest, one of the best things that ever happened to Canadian basketball was the Raptors and the Raptors staying. We had the Grizzlies for a while, and unfortunately they didn't stick around. But that's been massive for Canadian basketball, and they become Canada's team. Everyone's some of the other kids have their favorite teams, but I see so many Raptors jerseys around here, and now with I think that has been a massive catalyst to the success of Canadian basketball all over the country, not just in Ontario.
Right.
And you've got lots more kids playing these days. You've got I think the club programs that are the good ones that are that exist now are really helping kids develop and learning basketball at a high level. You've got we've got just a lot more kids playing basketball. The coaching is I think the coaching in Canada is underrated. If you look at the U Sports coaches, there are a lot of really great coaches, great basketball minds. U Sports basketball I think is underrated in terms of it's like a chess match. It's not a bunch of athletes out there who can go 1-on-5. It's you can see the coaches making adjustments mid game. It's a different game after halftime. So you've got a lot, and Canada basketball is starting to include a lot of these coaches, like Murphy Bernatowski, the new coach at UVic, is now involved in Canada basketball, and another great basketball mind took UVic to the national championship win this year in his first year. So even though he inherited a good bunch of players, like he had them playing proper basketball, and so I think it's a combination of the just more kids playing, better coaches, Canada, and everything's just more professional than it used to be. We've got a lot more professional coaches getting involved, from and from the management all the way down. Everything is just more professional than it's ever been. And now you've got some great NBA players. And we've had some NBA players in the past, obviously, playing for Canada, but I don't think we've ever had this sort of caliber of guys, from 1 to 12, who can all play, and and guys who are role players too. Guys who will go in there and accept the role as a role player, but they're still NBA guys. But now we've got some bona fide like superstars. So I'm really excited to see where the national team is going to go. We've been saying for years that we should be winning medals. I really think that this is, in my opinion, the first sort of crop of guys that I can really see competing for a gold medal. Other teams have had I think that potential, but not in the full combination of what we've got now. And I think getting Gordy in there as the head coach is a huge get for Canada basketball. He's obviously very capable of enabling guys to play at their peak potential and getting a team together to gel. And it's hard, it's hard as a national team coach for any team, because you don't have those guys for a short amount of time. They're all coming from different programs and different coaches. It's a tough thing to do. But I think the guys that are playing for Canada right now, they all seem to be really good, solid people. I don't think you've got an SGA who's arguably the best player in the world. I don't know him. I've never met him, but I've heard nothing but great things about him. He seems like a great person, a great teammate. I think he's going to, hopefully lead Canada to some serious success. Other guys too, that they're like Lou Dort. I remember seeing him play when he was at prep school. I was out there recruiting for UBC, and I remember, I think he was grade 10, and I called my buddy Jeff McKay. I go, "You got to come out and see this guy. This guy's a monster." And nobody was really talking. I don't think anyone was even talking about him at that time. And Jeff came out the next day because he's living in Toronto at that time, and he's like, "Man, he was like a man child. He was just this monster playing against these." I said the only thing, he can't really shoot, but but he sure learned how to shoot. And man, he's just a great player. I love watching him. I love his intensity. I think the one thing we are kind of missing is a dominant big. But the game has evolved where you don't. It's nice to have that, but I don't think it's necessary. I think we've got the talent and the leadership on our national team to overcome that. So really looking forward to watching these guys play this summer and upcoming big championships.
Yeah, no, well said. It's just an exciting time, and you talked about Steve, and you have a connection to him and a relationship with him, and he goes and becomes 2-time MVP, and it's just like that at the time was unreal. You talk about the Raptors and their impact and influence, and then Steve does that and showing a lot of kids like, wow, this is really cool. And we get to this year and SGA wins MVP, and they've really made him the face of the program, and he's embraced that. Like I have been around him a little bit just in scrums and whatnot, and a humble man, and he makes time for everyone and says hi to a lot of people, and I think he understands what it's all about. And I think the program is really fortunate to have a face like that to really push things forward, and he's really brought a lot of guys in to want to play with him and compete and represent the program, and that's the sense I get anyway. So I agree with you, man. Well said.
Yeah. You mentioned SGA being humble, and I think that's something that is really underrated and not talked about a lot, not just with him, but if you want to be a great player. There's a saying I have with my players here. I say there's two types of people in this world. There are those who are humble and those who are about to be humble. Because one thing I learned playing around the world is that no matter where you go, there's some guy that in that town or in that league who you've never heard of before, but he's going to kick your butt. He's better than you. That's a lesson I learned pretty early on. And being humble is super important. It's important to being successful. It's important to improving. It's important to being a good teammate. And again, when you're representing your country, being a humble guy who's got the time just to talk to people and sign autographs and is really important. I'm sure you've heard of Rick Hansen.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Rick Hansen's my first cousin, and so we're very tight. And he was in Penticton about a month ago, And so we had lunch with the mayor of Penticton, and Rick was there talking to the BC Association of Police Chiefs and just about accessibility issues and things like that.
Right.
And so Rick and I, we went to meet to have lunch with my mother. So my mom drove into town, and Rick is my mom's nephew, and so it was about would be a 5-minute walk. It took us 45 minutes to get to the restaurant because people would recognize Rick on the street and go, "Oh my God, it's Rick Hansen!" And they'd stop and say, "Can we get a picture with you?" And he's like, "I'd be honored," you know. And so being around Rick, I mean, he's still got the time to talk to people and take pictures and sign autographs, and he's the guy asking questions, and it was I got back to the restaurant. I said, geez, I forgot what it's like to be around someone who's truly famous. No one's looking at me in Penticton, but I'm with Rick Hansen, and they want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Those types of people are the people that it's show you what it's like to be a really good Canadian. And again, he's representing our country wherever he goes, and the same with the guys that we mentioned who play the national team. So yeah, the humility part of things I think is very important. It's a huge lesson for young players to learn as well.
No, absolutely. Okay, Spencer, who's your top 5 or favorite 5 of all time for Canada basketball?
Ooh. Well, I gotta talk about only the guys that I've played with.
Sure. Your 5, man.
Obviously, SGA, but I'll talk about the guys I play with. All right. Number 1 would be Steve Nash. I'm not saying any particular order. I'll name my 5.
Yeah.
Steve Nash, as a big, playing with him I tell people it was super easy. All I had to do is catch the ball and put it in the hoop because he's going to find you. Joey Vickery, unbelievable shooter, unbelievable rebounder, just crafty. I would say Phil Dixon.
Nice.
Phil was, he had that really bad injury in his Achilles when he was at Utah. And I think if not for that, he would have been a first-round draft pick and would have had a long NBA career. He was amazing, and he and I are good friends, and I love Phil. He's such a great guy.
Cool.
I would say Gerald Kaznowski. He was one of the I would call him. He's one of the top winners I've ever played with. If you played, I mentioned the most competitive games I ever played with was the pickup games at UVic, and his teams never lost. He was just a great player, and he was dirty, and he was physical, and he could shoot, and he was an amazing passer and a very high basketball IQ. Okay, so that's 4. I would say number 5 would be JD Jackson.
Nice.
Again, underrated guy, lefty, was tough as nails, very athletic, super smart, and now he's a great coach. He's had a great coaching career over in France, and he and I were best buddies. In university, we played. He played at UBC, I played at UVic, but we would be battle on the floor. But afterwards, we were all friends. So yeah, those would be my top 5 guys. I'm sure I could come up with a few more. Like I said, not in any order, but those are the 5 guys that come to my mind.
No, I mean, listen, that's a fun question I always like to ask, and Steve makes a lot of 5s, and rightfully so. But to get a Joey Vickery mentioned, some people from the GTA have thrown Phil in there. I mean, they recognize everyone knows what Phil was like, just a hooper, and JD, probably not enough people know about his game. He was super good. So that's a great 5, man. Appreciate that. Spencer, man, any shout outs or thank yous before I get you out of here? And again, truly appreciate you taking the time and the conversation. Really enjoyed it, man.
Shout outs. I don't know. I didn't think about that. I've probably got a lot. Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on here, Maddie. It's been an honor to be part of this podcast. I know a lot of great names have been on here, and just happy to have a chance to contribute a little bit and tell a couple stories. And I was telling my brother-in-law before I came up here, I said, I got to be careful which stories I tell, because but no, it's been fun to talk, and it's always had time for you, Ben, and hope to meet you at some point down the road in person.
No, well, I'm not too far. I've spent a lot of time in the Okanagan, actually. Just as you know, like when you were kind of always in the Yukon, like BC, you'd always go there, and I have family in Kamloops and friends in Kelowna and all through the area. So I do know the area pretty well. So next time I'm out, we'll have to have a glass of your wine there.
We'll take you to some nice wineries, that's for sure. Yeah, anytime you're welcome here, Matt.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's a wrap on another episode of Canada Hoops. I want to thank Spencer McKay for pulling up. Thank you for listening. Remember to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Check out our YouTube channel. Hit us up on Instagram and x.com. Keep supporting Canada basketball and our Canadian Hoopers, and we will see you on the next episode.